Grandsire podcast. I had to bring out the big guns today, six guns, and in this case, what's going on, Brendan Gibson? How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for making the time to have me on.
Of course, I'm very excited. I love talking to the coaches and everything. Ever since I did the podcast, I get to talk to coaches now, and it's like the insight is so different from like just the standard pre-fight interviews with the fighters.
Yeah, I think we definitely come with a different perspective of the fighters, of the bouts, of the matchup, and then the fight's one night, and we spend days and months and years with these fighters. So yeah, we definitely carry a different perspective.
The crazy thing is I talked to a few fighters before their fights, like Mike Davis and stuff like that. And I'm hearing more and more fighters say like, my coaches know about my opponent, the matchup, and all that stuff. And when you try to talk to them about it, like Mike Davis, like I don't even know my opponent's name. And I told him I was like, that's terrifying. You think like a fighter's super prepared. Like really sounds like more and more guys are letting their coaches take care of all that stuff.
I've seen a full spectrum from fighters that never want to watch tape, all the way to fighters that almost watch it obsessively and compulsively. And even thinking back to fighters I idolized coming up, like Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao said he would never watch film at all, and that was Freddie Roach's job. And so I definitely have some fighters who've taken that approach, but fighters like Jon Jones watch so many countless hours of film on their opponents, of interviews of their opponents, and I think that's the more fighters can embrace that and learn the tendencies, the feints, the strengths, the weaknesses, and even the psychological aspects, the more prepared a fighter will be going into that battle.
What are fighters looking for when they're watching their opponent's interviews? I've heard a lot of guys they do that, but what is it that they're looking for? Like, is it insight on the training camp, or is there something specific?
Sometimes you get a little, you see the chink in their armor, or you see areas that maybe they're overconfident in, or they might name drop that might lead to a little detective quest to see if their training partners have posted anything. And yeah, I don't know. We're just always on the search, and sometimes just getting to know the guy, right? Like if it's an opponent that we've never seen before, never met, maybe an opponent that hasn't even been in the organization, you really start to get some insight on them, especially if they're from a smaller team or camp. A good example, Aaron Pico last year was fighting Solo Hatley Jr., and we watched an interview where Solo Hatley said, "Man, I fight amateurs that are tougher than Aaron Pico." And that was all Aaron needed, man. That lit a fire in him that kept us burning all camp and through the fight.
That's crazy how it kind of sounds like Michael Jordan, where some guys they need like the little quote, right? Like the and I took that personal meme. It's like the little,
Right.
okay, now the fight's completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. And some fighters really search for that. Some fighters really do. So yeah, I always laugh when I watch the Last Dance and saw that at Michael Jordan, because I see that same mentality in a lot of fighters.
Who's like the most like yeah, I know you can't always name drop and stuff, but who's the fighter like you see it in the most? Like everybody compares like Jon Jones and Michael Jordan just on the greatness, right? And their legacies. But is there one fighter that has that ultra competitive like Michael Jordan, like that tries to walk faster than you and just competing for everything, even when you're just chilling?
I would say that's Jon Jones, man. He never wants to lose a single round in the gym. He doesn't want to be the guy on the slower warm up, or he always wants to be first in the sit ups and the strength, and it's just that ultra competitiveness. And then it carries outside of the game too, right? Where whether it's like shooting sport, or if we're playing basketball or playing video games, yeah, that hyper competitiveness is definitely something in his veins.
I've always heard like the competitiveness, like some people it's like, oh, it's bad to be competitive. Like you think like you're playing Monopoly with someone and they'll like throw the board at you. But also for these athletes, I feel like it gives you an extra little something, right? The competitiveness, like it pushes you to, especially in fighting, like nobody wants to get their ass whooped. So it's like a little extra something, like extra motivation, like you don't want to lose out there.
Yeah, and yeah, you don't want to lose in the fight game. You don't want to lose in front of your family and your friends and a crowd of 30,000 and everybody on, watching the pay per view and on social media. And no, it's not fun to be on that losing side. So it's definitely something that is at their core, and sometimes it comes out in other areas.
Speaking of the big pay per view, we had the big fight last night. Obviously, Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, all those big names. Were you able to watch everything live?
Yeah, absolutely. I hung out with some fighters, and we had a nice COVID safe, socially distanced viewing party, and enjoyed the fights.
Well, what was everyone's reaction like? I know obviously the co-main event was impressive, but the main event, right? Like I saw Twitter just everyone tweeted at the exact same time. Everybody freaked out. Like, what were you guys doing when you saw that?
Man, at the end of the first round, you could really tell that Conor was starting to find his timing. I thought his feints were doing well, but also by the end of the first round, you could see that Dustin was having success with that low kick, and Dustin was strong in the clinch. Dustin did a good job hand fighting Conor in that first round, and they both looked, like they had dumped a little adrenaline in that first round. So it was going to be interesting to see how the second started. And when it did, Connor came out pressuring heavy, but Dustin was right on those kicks again and finding his confidence. And man, when he kind of clipped Connor and then Dustin pivoted off the cage and pressured Connor against the fence and just let it go. Yeah, our little viewing party erupted.
Well, was that is that best case scenario for those calf kicks? Like I know some guys see him limp after the fight and stuff like that, but this like directly led to the KO, right? Like his legs were gone at that point. Is that really best case scenario when you use something like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You start taking away, especially from a power puncher like Connor, it's hard to put the weight, plant, and especially a fighter like Connor who's so good at changing ranges. Um, you take away some of his mobility, and he's going to have a hard time finding his big power punch without taking one. And then you start to see those exchanges pick up a little bit. So, yeah, definitely best case scenario. There was a time, where Connor wasn't trying to check it; he was just trying to intercept with his left cross. So it could be kind of a dice roll when you're not setting up that calf kick. And Dustin was just ripping it. There wasn't much hands in front of it. He just was letting it go. And I wouldn't say it was a dice roll because he had already had Connor hurt, but um, yeah, Connor had to try to look for that big home run, or he was going to keep eating it and get to the point where that leg was dead.
I assume for someone like you, especially with the striking background and everything, that must be like so like you must be able to like appreciate something like that, right? The two high level guys, like some people try to not give Dustin credit, but I think that was the one where it's like, all right, put some respect on his name in that situation. Like that must have been really fun for you to watch, as and I'm sure you can appreciate it more than like I guess a regular fan or a regular person would in this case.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's all kinds of people that appreciate it on different levels, but as far as real competitive back and forth, 2 round fight with high stakes, just the psychology coming from the fight from 6 years ago and how much those two fighters have changed and grown and matured, and it was to me it was just real exciting to watch. And I've always been a big fan of Dustin, and he has a great team from American Top Team, and I've always been a big fan of Conor McGregor too. Both fighters have always treated me with the utmost respect, and and I'm big fans of both of their fighting styles.
I think the biggest key that came out from the fight was, obviously, like, the hair being different, right? People were saying, now the bald guy's always gonna lose that match or the well-coiffed guy is gonna have a difference. So, well-coiffed guy yourself, like, I'm sure you must have seen something like that.
Hey man, those guys are both style icons in the MMA game. So I love Conor with like the like the first Poirier fight, the high shave, hair braided back, Irish assassin look, looking like a Valhalla Viking. Yeah, man, Dustin's always slick too. But that's funny. That's funny.
It's crazy, like, how different Dustin looks, right? Like, before he was always the buzz cut guy. Like, I feel like we all went to high school with a Dustin Poirier, right? When he was, like, I was looking at the pictures from his wedding, right? And you're like, I had a guy like that in my class. Like, I could pinpoint him. And now you see him, he comes out, and, even the tattoos look better. The hair looks good. And it's like, it feels like a completely different guy, like, at lightweight. I don't know if it's about the muscle he put on or if it's directly the haircut, but it's got to be some kind of correlation.
Hey man, yeah, and you get the swag, and you keep building fights, and your kind of aura and mystique grows, and then you got some money to buy some fresh clothes and see the barber once a week. Yeah, it all adds up.
I feel like that's the dream, right? The barber once a week, or even you send him a text like, "Hey, man, I'm gonna send you a plane ticket, and you just come meet me every Sunday." Like, I feel like that's the ultimate, like, that's the goal right there. You have your guy with the suitcase that comes to see you, like, just for you, like the NBA players do.
Oh man, that's the dream right there. That's what I'm working towards one day.
Nah, that would be the best. Like, like it's nothing to just fly out your barber. Like, you're in Florida, no big deal. Let me just get you a ticket real quick. Be here Sunday. Like, that's really, I mean, especially hair, like it grows so fast. Like, and with a well fade and everything, you get like a week of looking good, and then the rest is like, oh, I got to get back out there.
And then I just love like the young killer mindset of like I'm just shaving my head in my own bathroom, right before the fight. I love that mindset too.
Well, I did that during quarantine. Like, some people went the route of looking like Castaway. Others went, the Dustin Poirier, like, the look from before. And, I was thinking, like, I'm sure I'm going to lose my hair someday. I'd love to know how I look. But when you go from having quite a bit of hair to bald, like, for like 5 minutes, you got to sink in, like, oh my God, like, I'm a bald guy now. Like, my hair feels a temperature now. Like, my head, it's crazy going from, a guy with hair to all of a sudden being bald.
Right.
It's and you can feel temperature. Like it was in the middle of summer and I could feel like the wind on my head. I was like, I don't like that feeling.
I definitely had a crazy 2020 hair streak myself where I just grew it out long, shaved it under, thought that was a mistake. Then you have to kind of grow back the sides again, and you go through an awkward porcupine looking phase.
What
But
was the strategy going in for you? Like, did you think about it or is it something that just kind of happened and then one day you were like, oh man, like we gotta tame this mane?
yeah, and I also think I was just losing my mind, like quarantined at home, going crazy. Like, well, if now might be the time to have the Viking haircut. You never know, man.
Yeah, it's
Trying to be
funny.
a little more civil these days, not totally ready for the apocalypse like I was a few months ago.
Right. I mean, we see you well caught. Even the beard's gone. I think you went back for the like you said, the civil look now.
Right? Yep. Yep. Not so much savage, like prepared to walk into a grocery store. The rest of society.
Exactly. Or even the grocery store now, like you don't even have to worry about the facial hair. Like if you wear the mask, even if you look like crap, it's like, nobody can see it anyway. As long as the eyes look good, like you're fine.
Right. Interesting times we're living in.
For sure. I mean, how was 2020 for you guys, in the gym wise? I assume it's gotta be difficult, right? I know everybody was like, our gym shut down, but if you had a special knock, you can still get in. Like it must have been very difficult for you guys to, keep things going and keep the fighters sharp too.
Yeah, it really was. I ended up convincing my wife to let me build out our garage into a gym. And, start off us just kind of training on bare concrete to some puzzle mats. Now, real nice professional level wrestling mat in there. Um, yeah, but it was hard. Everybody wants to keep their families safe and their loved ones safe and their community safe. And our gym was closed down. And there weren't that many fights. In a lot of ways, Lucas said 2020 was great for me. All my fighters went undefeated, and I think a lot of that had to do with not cornering 30, 40 fights a year, but just having very few select, like Jones, Condit, Pico, focused on those guys. And I think slowing down and not being at the gym and hustling as much as I had been and just slowing things down and focusing on those guys led to greater results for us.
Did you do the whole Fight Island experience? I know we saw Carlos Condit
Mhm.
out there not too long ago. Did you do it just once or did you have multiple Fight Islands?
Yeah, I just did it once. I did it corner Carlos for the Court McGee bout, which was like Fight Island 2, and then this past one against Matt Brown, we trained all camp, but the way the fight lined up, I was going to have to be gone for 3 weeks, and then New Mexico State quarantine rules was another 2 weeks upon return, and I just couldn't take 5 weeks away right now from my family and from my profession. But yeah, and Carlos was in great hands for that. We had a strong team that was able to go out there with them, and but I did catch the first Fight Island bout with him, and Holly was on that card as well. Yeah, what a great experience.
What was it? 'Cause I've heard mixed reviews, like, some people were like, "It's cool, like, it's great, but I'm never doing that again." Like, I've heard some fighters where it's like, "Oh, it's so boring," especially for the guys that, had to wait to catch the flight a few days after. Like, I've heard some people loved it because they got to focus. Others, it was like, I couldn't have been more bored in my entire life.
It was, I mean, I'm very fortunate because I've been able to travel the world through martial arts. Been on almost every end of this globe, and so I'm always grateful. And I had never been to the Middle East, so there's a lot of elements about Abu Dhabi I enjoyed. But those quarantine days add up. Like you're quarantining in Vegas and you're quarantining in Abu Dhabi, and you're just kind of trapped in a hotel room. So it doesn't really matter where in the world you are. It could be super cool and exotic and beautiful. But if you're trapped in a room quarantining, then there's not much to it. But the overall experience I enjoyed, man. The people were great, very hospitable. It was great to see another part of the world, and we were able to escape a little bit. We went and rode some jet skis in the Persian Gulf, which was a lot of fun one of the days. And but the company was great. So, I was there with Carlos and then Holly and Coach Winklejohn and Coach Greg Jackson and Coach Izzy Martinez. And we had a blast and everybody got their hand raised. So, not much more you could ask for on a fight trip.
So I guess you didn't notice anybody shimmying along the balconies, dropping a mysterious bag, like, you didn't
No.
see any of that.
I saw somebody say who had the best performance of Fight Island 3. And I said, the dude that somehow worked his way into the W Hotel, which was like already on a bridge off an island. So how he got in there, unknown to me, and then shimmying across the floors and carrying whatever precious cargo had to be in there. It's a mystery for the ages.
That was the thing, like, when I saw it get reported, I was like, "I'm probably reading it wrong, or I'm tired, I've been at work all day." There's no way I'm reading that someone dropped off a mysterious bag and then the fighter got cut. Like, I think that's gotta be weirdest story of 2021, but one of the weirdest things I think, we've heard in MMA, and we've heard some really weird stuff.
Yeah, and who knows what is going through a fighter's mind on fight week when they already have a lot of nerves and you know fears are coming up and maybe he forgot something really important that's part of like a ritual form. Maybe he forgot. Who knows? Who knows? We could speculate all day. Sucks he got cut. Sucks he had to, you know, having somebody that wasn't part of the bubble come in and breach the bubble puts everybody at risk. Like, what if Connor or Dustin or Chandler or Hooker, one of those guys, was exposed to COVID because of this rogue ninja agent? So, I mean, when you think of the millions of dollars the UFC spends, like test fighters before they go to Vegas, put them up in Vegas quarantine, private chartered flights, private hotel. Um, they take so many precautions. So to have one guy put it all at risk and breaching the bubble, yeah, I could see why the UFC took that so seriously.
I mean, that's the thing too, like, with Vegas, we saw all these fights at the last minute, kind of fall out and stuff like that, but with this bubble in Abu Dhabi, I felt like, although it's a pain in the ass for a lot of people, like, it does sound like it's pretty safe unless, of course, you've got a guy shimmying across a balcony with a mystery bag, but it did sound like it was a lot safer for everyone, but, obviously, it must have cost millions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Vegas, Vegas is Vegas, man. Guys are always going to sneak out, and all the amenities that are in America are right there. You just call up an Uber and you're down the street at some club getting exposed again. So I can definitely see how in Vegas there was a lot more COVID positive cases compared to Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi, we didn't see many fights fall off at all due to COVID positives.
Exactly, but that was the positive thing too, right? Like, I was like, if they can pull off this bubble, maybe it could lead to something else, but at the same time, like, you saw how complicated it was. Guys were going to Vegas and quarantining for Fight Island, like, it got so crazy. I just don't know if you can pull that off for every single event, every single Saturday like we're seeing it.
It's hard, man. And pre pandemic, man, it was easy for us to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico, jump on a Wednesday or Thursday or even a Friday plane to Vegas, corner about Saturday, be home Sunday morning, and right back to our work building champs. Now to go work one of these fights, I mean, you're pretty much committing a month just for that one bout. So it's really challenging, especially on the up and comer guys. That at the end of the day, this is all business for us. This is all work for us, and it has to make financial sense sometimes too. So if I was McGregor's coach, I'd have no problem being out there a month. If I was an undercard fighter who's making 10 and 10, and I'm getting 500 or $1,000 for that, that would be challenging.
Yeah, exactly, and also, if you're with McGregor, you get to stay in the yacht. Like, we saw how nice they got it during fight week. It was like, if anything, like, I'll go on there no matter what, but people don't talk about it for the coaches. Like, everybody's like, you guys just do it for the love of the game. But at the end of the day, there is obviously love for the game, but it's a business too. Like, you guys have to make it so that it makes sense for yourself as well.
Yeah, and man, I love cornering fights, and there are fighters I've gone for $0, traveled the world with to just help them achieve their dream. Um, but at the same time, I'd be able to get back to work on Monday, and I hope we get this herd immunity and people vaccinated and get crowds back and restrictions lifted and get back to the way things were.
So one of your fighters who you're gonna be, working with, very soon at some point, Jon Jones, he's doing this fun thing where he's bulking up to heavyweight, and he clearly understands social media because he'll post, like, a picture of his shoulder, after a good workout, so he's got the pump going, and then every single website you can think of, Jon Jones looking gigantic at heavyweight, even though all he posted was his shoulder, like, this is a man who clearly understands, like, the role social media has, and, like, he's done 0 interviews, and there's a million articles about his new physique, even though we really haven't seen that much.
Oh man, John, John likes giving just tiny little glimpses into his life and his training, and keeping the buzz around him. But I'll tell you what, the John's progression into heavyweight has gone very smooth, very smooth. You see fighters put on weight sometimes, and it doesn't apply to their fighting style and the speed, the stamina, the technique. All some of those things get lost in exchange for the strength. Um, Not John, man. I feel like all throughout his 20s, he was able to compete at light heavyweight, and he was a massive light heavyweight fighter. And you look at his brothers, Chandler and Arthur Jones; those are big boys. John's genetics are, I think he's going to be walking around 250, solid muscle, fast, explosive, full of great technique, like we saw during his career at light heavyweight. And I can't wait, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For people that they talk about, like, fighters putting on weight, they think, like, "Oh, the fighter's gonna put on 30 pounds of pure muscle," but that's not really how it works, right? Like, you have to bulk, you might have to cut to try to trim some of the fat. What's Jon Jones doing? Is he there's different kind of bulk, right? There's the dirty bulk, there's a clean bulk. What's kinda Jon Jones doing? Or is it maybe something a little bit in between?
Yeah, he has a great team of strength and conditioning coaches, and those guys are definitely the mastermind behind it and what areas he's putting on that weight. And it's my job to go in there with my mitts a few times a week and make sure that all that new strength is being applied, and we're keeping his technique sharp, and we're keeping all the fast twitch muscles activated and going, and keeping his neural pathway sharp on those combinations in his defense. So. Um, and we have a long ways to go, right? I mean, you have to kind of find those fine points where we're still working great, and also, during a camp, you're gonna lean up no matter what. So, what is kind of a good weight for us to get at pre-camp, and then work our way down into through a fight camp, and heading into the fight, and just seeing John fueled up food wise, not having to restrict his calories, and be super disciplined on his diet. Um, I think we're just seeing huge gains in all of his workouts. So I'm excited to it's always much more fun to go with a heavyweight on fight week when they're eating and not cutting weight. It's like a whole different sport. It's a whole different existence. So I'm excited to share that with John.
Well, I mean, for you, like, as you're holding pads, like, I assume you must feel, like, a lot more power coming your way, right? Like, it's gotta be a little bit like, "Oh, there's a difference." Like, this is heavyweight power. Like, light heavyweight is one thing, but now you get to bulk and stuff, like, you must feel a big difference when you're holding those pads.
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm trying to bulk up a little bit myself so I can get through a full John Jones heavyweight camp. I mean, a lot. I mean, he's hitting hard. He's hitting very hard. His kicks, his knees, his elbows, his punches. He's feeling like a heavyweight goat.
So how for you, because you're a big guy in striking, right? Like, all this kind of stuff. Like, how does that translate? Putting on the muscle, how does that translate to your power? Like, 'cause power is complicated, right? Like, we have guys like people say Max Holloway doesn't have the one punch KO power, stuff like that. Other guys like a Francis Ngannou, he'll touch you and guys fall asleep. Like, how does the putting on muscle? Does it really translate to your power? Or is it sort of about technique and stuff like that?
Well, technique is the most important part, right? But if that technique is down, and you put on a few pounds in the right places, especially the core, right? Especially the legs, your butt, your abs, that's the power that's going to really translate. Like, to me, big, biceps aren't going to make you punch harder. So, guys, big chest, big biceps, that doesn't necessarily translate, but making those legs bigger definitely does. As far as what I can feel in a fight. So yeah, having that muscle in the right places is key. And a guy like John, whose technique is so flawless, he knows how to hit hard no matter what, and he knows how to kick very hard. And so adding on 10 pounds, 20 pounds, I think we're going to see a big difference too.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I think people do tend to think, like, if you have big forearms, if you have the big biceps and stuff like that, that you would hit hard. But like you mentioned, it's your core, right? Like, your power doesn't come from your bicep. Like, a lot of people call it the vanity muscle, right? They're like, it's
Hmm.
really not that useful. So I think people do imagine, like, if you got big biceps, then you're gonna put someone to sleep. But Yeah, I guess it'd be more helpful to put someone to sleep in a choke with your bicep more than it would be with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the great thing about mixed martial arts is those muscles are going to be used in one facet or another. But as far as striking, I always look at guys like their shoulders, their lats, their legs. That's their core. That's where a lot of the power comes from.
I know for the OSP fight, like, we saw Jon Jones, right? He was having fun on social media, he looked gigantic, he looked ripped, he was like, "I'm powerlifting," showing off the big numbers, and I believe we saw Greg Jackson kind of criticize it a little bit, right? Like, he got a little bit too big and stuff like and sort of affected him. What's the difference now compared to at that time? Because I assume with heavyweight, you get a little bit more freedom compared to last time where you still had to cut 205.
Well, I think that's it. We put on a lot of weight and then had to do a massive weight cut. And I feel like that's something that can tire a fighter leading into a bout, no matter who they are. But if you're able to put on that weight and get your synapses firing to maintain that technique and that cardio and that pace and that footwork with that new added physicality, and then you don't have to cut weight, hopefully you just see positive results out of it. But during that time too, when Jon was in his powerlifting phase prior to the OSP, he wasn't always actively training martial arts during that time. And with this time, he's definitely bulking up, but he's staying very active with his martial arts. So I think that's a key component too. Like he's continuing to grow and improve, and and make sure his body's maintaining that technique.
So when you guys are preparing for heavyweight, like, are there certain opponents, like, do you guys have, like, a list of the guys you'd like to see him fight, or have you guys reached that point where it's like, put him against anybody and it's gonna be entertaining no matter what?
Well, that's between Jon, his manager, and the promotion. My job as a coach is, whatever name gets thrown on that dotted line, we got to develop a good strategy and a good game plan for and make sure he's ready. And we have a great team around Jon Jones. Tusa Alencar, Izzy Martinez, Greg Jackson, Mike Winklejohn, Coach Alex City and Dong. We have a great team, and I think the proof's in the pudding, right? Like we have a solid record, and we've gone up against all kinds of different types and styles, and grapplers and wrestlers and Hall of Famers and past champions. And so, heavyweight, there's some big marquee names there, and I think it's going to be our job to be ready for any of them. But right now, it's kind of nice without an opponent, and we just focus on making Jon an even better version of himself.
So I'm curious for you as a striking coach, like, it makes me think of Francis Ngannou just as an example. But when you face like, without it being about Jon Jones, like you face a guy like that with a power puncher where, you make one mistake and your guy could go to sleep instantly, good chin or not, right? Like that guy has so much power.
Mm-hmm.
How frustrating is it for you preparing for someone like that? Because I imagine you have to. It's like someone mentions, like you have to be flawless the entire fight, and he could throw something sloppy, and all of a sudden your guy goes to sleep. Like, are you thinking about stuff like that as a coach when you're preparing a game plan against a big power puncher like that?
No, absolutely. How can he not? I mean, there's guys at heavyweight like Overeem and Nagano and Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis and Stipe that it just takes one punch. Heavyweight is almost a. Sometimes I joke that heavyweight is a different sport altogether because sometimes the same rules don't apply. Um, so your defense and your footwork have to be very, very sharp at heavyweight. Very sharp. It's not something we take lightly, man. This game is crazy no matter what weight class you're in. And there's a whole full spectrum from like the speed of the 25ers, where we see power too, like Figueroa's still knocking guys out, all the way to heavyweight where there's zero room for mistake. So that's why my job. Sometimes we look flashy on the pads, like ripping some cool combo, but my job primarily is focus on the defense. All these guys know how to punch and kick and knee and hit hard. Um, I think what separates the greats is their defensive ability. And that's something we've seen. Jon fighting a decade at light heavyweight for the world title each time. He took very little damage over that past decade. When you think about it, you think about some of the wars that these guys have been in. I mean, even Poirier last night, like he took some big shots. Connor took some big shots, right? And then if you look back at a decade of their work at a world championship level, I mean, I think it makes what Jon Jones has accomplished that much greater.
One thing I'm curious about while we're on the punching power, like you see guys like Max Holloway, right? Put on a clinic, and then everyone's like, "Oh, he didn't get the finish. He doesn't have the punching power." What's the science behind the punching power? Is it just some people are saying either you have it or you don't. Some say like it's whether or not you plant your feet. What like from what you've seen, like what's the science behind punching power? Is it as mystical as people make it sound?
I definitely think that there are some God-given attributes that some fighters have. You know, there's a fighter when I trained with when I was young, UFC vet, Damasio Page. He was one of those guys when we were young. Like he was strong, he had amazing technique, but it almost didn't make sense how hard he could hit for his weight class. Um, Same with Aaron Pico. I think that Aaron Pico has that gift. Like there are welterweights and middleweights that I train that do not hit as hard as Aaron Pico. And part of that is because he's put in 30,000 hours of, high level training. He was sparring Miguel Cotto when he was young. Um, so it's a combination of a lot of factors, but I think to really develop that punching power, um, sometimes you just have to have some God given gifts. And man, Max is a volume striker. We see it in the Diaz brothers. Um, there are a lot of great fighters that the threat isn't the one punch; it's the 10 punch combo, and their ability to have that pace and pressure in the fourth round and the fifth round, and that's what makes Max so dangerous. And not that one of those shots could still put down anybody. And hats off to Calvin Cater because he was able to absorb a lot of punishment in that fight. But Max's volume and his speed and his targeting and his accuracy, it's just incredible. And that's something a lot of fighters would trade their power for.
Speaking of who's like the fighter because Max put on a clinic. I mean, everybody, even if you don't appreciate striking, you had to appreciate striking. Who's like the one guy you watch and it's like, you could just watch him strike all day just because you have that appreciation. Like people always mention guys like Anderson Silva and stuff like that. Is there someone for you like you truly have a big appreciation for what they do on the feet?
Oh man, I won't name a mixed martial artist, but I'll name a boxer. Man, I love Canelo Alvarez. He's one of my favorites. I love Bud Crawford. There's a lot of boxers right now that I draw a lot of inspiration with, and um, in the MMA game, there's been a million fighters, a whole plethora of fighters that I've been inspired by, past and current fighters. But yeah, when it comes to like just the super refined mechanics, man, I love watching Canelo and his setups.
I mean, Canelo, he's got so many good things for him too. Like he's a guy we talk about punching power. That's a guy with the punching power, right? And he's so technical. Like he's one of those guys. Like he feels like the complete package when we watch him box.
And the defense to go with it, and the cardio and the pace, and the way he's moved up weight classes. I feel like we're living in a special time to get to witness that.
Everybody's talking about the trilogy with Triple G. Is that something that interests you? Because I see some people they're like, well, he's past his prime. Others want to see it. You have any interest in that one?
Yeah, I mean, they've had two really competitive bouts that were back and forth, and they both had their moments in it. And sure, why not? And then I know that there's other big challenges that may lay ahead for Canelo, and challenges down in weight class, up in weight class where he's at, and past adversaries. So anytime Canelo fights, I'm tuning in.
Well, I'm curious about you because I know you sort of had a future in kickboxing, right? Boxing and stuff like that. I believe it was an injury that sort of derailed that for you. What exactly happened sort of at that point where you were trying to build a career for yourself in boxing and kickboxing?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to start learning how to box at a very young age, and came up under some great coaches, and started training with Greg Jackson, Mike Winklejohn, way before the gym blew up and became what it is. Um, and always had great partners, man. I would go hard rounds back in the day with like Nate Marquardt and Rashad Evans and Keith Jardine and Joey Villasenor and George St. Pierre. And Greg would pull me in. I would spar Diego Sanchez and Cowboy Hard. Like I love those guys, man. We were great teammates, and yeah, I don't know how great of a fighter I would have ever been. I like to think that I definitely had some skill set and some hunger and passion for it. But I had a tib fib fracture, very similar to like Anderson Silva. Had to have a few surgeries, and it was a blessing in disguise. Greg Jackson's. I was still pretty young too. I was in my mid 20s, and he said, "Hey, I think you could be a coach." And they kind of started me off kids class and amateurs, and I worked my way up. And heck, but before I was 30, I was cornering multiple UFC title fights. So I'm grateful to have the coaches and the teammates that I had, and guys like Jon Jones and Carlos Condit that believed in me to be a coach, even though I was more their peer in age and training and things like that. So yeah, I'm grateful, man. It's what I'm supposed to do.
So what was it about that injury that kind of forced you to derail it? Is it the fact that it kind of took you out in your prime? Is it the fact that it was never going to be the same again? What was it that sort of made you kind of stop doing that, stop pursuing that?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I had to have multiple surgeries, so that kind of put me in a long layoff. When I came back, it was still a long time before I could kick again. So at that point, I was primarily just boxing, um, but my body didn't necessarily feel the same for a long time, and it kind of took me a while to get like my size and my strength back on, and not even just kicking myself, but being able to have like proper footwork and not risk injury again. And you know, it was cool because I was able to stay in the gym by picking up mitts and start learning mitts, which in many ways is like a martial art all in itself to master. And when I started investing in that and investing in myself as a coach, I found so much more reward than I ever could as a fighter. And I knew that that was the path I wanted to be on. So once I really started getting into that, there was no point of me kind of going back and changing my focus to compete again. I was like, man, these other guys need me. They're looking up to me now, and this is what I'm committed to.
It seems for like the coaching, a lot of it is based on trust, right? It's sort of like, can you trust this guy? Because people, you're going to see guys at their most vulnerable. Like, do you think the fact that you were in there sparring with guys and training with them, really from an early age, like, is that what really helped you sort of build that bond with these guys and get you to where you are coaching wise? I assume if you just walked in like, hey, I'm going to do striking, a lot of guys would have told you, get out of our gym. What are you doing?
Yeah, I do think it helped that in that time I was peers with a lot of those guys, and while I may not have been competing on the same level as them, they knew I'd bite down on a mouthpiece and we'd go hard, and I feel like I was respected in the gym because of that, and guys like Cowboy Cerrone and Carlos Condit, man, those guys used to put it on me too. And but they also respected me enough to go and hold pads for them and to help lead them into battle and trust my voice and my eyes during high pressure bouts.
Are you still out there sparring and all that stuff, or have you kind of stopped that? Are you sticking with the mitts and stuff, or can we still expect to see you in the cage?
No, I don't think you'll ever see me in the cage, but I got a round or two in me every now and then. I'll go a few rounds.
It must be weird, right, to go from coaching these guys all of a sudden, like, you must feel like the same way you did when you were young, right? When you go back to sparring, like, it must like there's a certain muscle memory, right? A certain feeling you get that, you have only when you step in the cage, something like that.
Yeah, man, I would love to compete right now just with the knowledge I have, but I'm almost 40 now. I like to spar a little bit, like when I teach class, get in there. If there's an odd person out, I'll usually jump in and just focus on my footwork and my defense. And I saw a funny meme the other day that was like had a Michelangelo Ninja Turtle face, and it's like when you're just waiting to get hit hard so you can go full cowabunga mode. And that sounds silly, but sometimes that's me. I just like pressure, wait for somebody to go really hard. Like, okay, cool. Now I can turn it up. And I never like to hit these guys hard in the head, but man, I will. I love a liver shot.
That liver shot, it's weird, right? Like, you land it and all of a sudden it's like the entire body, like you lose every air and it's like your body's like, oh, and then like your head's watching and you just can't move. It feels like a cheat code a little bit.
Oh, it is, man, and nothing like a well timed, well mastered liver shot. I feel like I got a lot of tricky setups for it, but man, I'm not trying to be a fighter right now. I like being able to eat whatever I want, and I try to stay strong and stay fit so I can hang with these guys on the mitts because that's a very physically demanding job. But yeah, that fighter life is past me.
Well, I mean, coaching must be a cool experience too, because at the end of the day, you're working with, I mean, especially you're working with the highest level athletes in the world. Like you've got a guy that's in conversation to be the GOAT, So it's like you get to see these names and to know that you have a part in your career, in their career. It must feel pretty great, knowing that, you're a part of something like that.
Absolutely, man. I've been blessed and fortunate to get to work with numerous champions and legends, and um, I take a lot from Mike Winklejohn and Greg Jackson, but I also take a lot from Jon Jones and Alistair Overeem and Cowboy Cerrone and Andre Lasky and Carlos Condit. And now I'm getting to a point in my coaching career where now I got these young bucks like Aaron Pico, who's 23, and get to share some knowledge that I've learned from these guys and pass along to the next generation. So I feel like my IQ and my knowledge and my skill set are all continuing to develop in this game, and I think this next generation of fighters, we're going to produce a few more champions.
So, for the Aaron Pico things, I feel like everyone wanted to tackle, the Aaron Pico projects. Everyone was trying to figure out, is it an issue of, his mentality? Does he have holes in his game, striking wise? Everybody was trying to figure it out. What was kind of your approach when he came to you? Because Aaron Pico, like, is one of those guys. Physically, he's got all the skills. You just have to kind of figure out, like, what can you do, for him to realize that kind of potential.
I think we just had to slow it down a little bit, I think there's so many nuances in this game, and there's bridges in this game, right, that connect, like the clinch work to the wrestling, to the grappling, to the jiu-jitsu, to the ground and pound striking, to the boxing, to the kickboxing. And Aaron was very good in like different segments, but he didn't have all the interconnected woven fabric in between them. And so that was a big piece, but really just slowing it down. Like, hey man, you don't gotta be champion tomorrow. Let's slow it down. Let's get some good walks in the caves. Let's get some good rounds in. Let's go sit on a stool a few times. Let's listen. And just slowing it down has been very beneficial. And I think we just have a great bond and a great team. Yeah, man, he's like my little brother. There's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for him, and that bond is very genuine between us. And there's a lot of trust in fight camp and the game plan and the preparation in the corner. And 2020, I think it showed, man. We had three amazing finishes. He took zero damage, and we were able to kind of reset and put that fire back in him, where he knows who he is. Man, that kid's a world class fighter and destined to be a champion, and he believes in that again.
People were saying for Aaron Pico, like it was a mental thing, right? A lot of people felt like for him it was his mentality or whatever it was. Did you feel like that was a part of it at all, or was it, maybe something people weren't quite realizing? Because I know as media, we like watch the fight, just give a quick opinion on it. But as a coach, you really get to see guys when they're vulnerable, and you sort of figure out, that's where the holes are that maybe other people didn't realize.
Well, yeah, there was definitely areas for us to build upon, and his coaches before were all excellent, man. Like I got a lot of respect for Antonio McKee and Freddie Roach, who I idolize, and the team at AKA, who has built numerous world champions. Like he's been surrounded by great coaching. It was never a knock on his coaching. Sometimes I think the path he was on was just very ambitious. Like we we don't take that many other 19-year-olds and throw them in there against guys that have 30 fights. Um, if anything, that might have been what I would have adjusted, but hindsight's always 2020, and I think Aaron and our team are very grateful that he learned those lessons when he did, because it's giving us a very focused, aware, disciplined, hardworking Aaron Pico, and we couldn't ask for anything more.
So how do you build a bond with someone like Aaron Pico? Because obviously he comes to you and stuff like I don't know if you can reveal everything, but how do you sort of go about something like that? Because I assume you reach a point where you realize either this is going to work or it's not going to work. Like how do you sort of do something like that in this kind of situation?
The fight game's crazy, man, because there has to be a lot of trust. So we all have to just kind of like sweat and bleed and sacrifice together, and I think that is always like shown and earned. Um, like nothing can be given. Aaron Pico doesn't give. He doesn't care that I train Jon Jones or Carlos Condit or any of these guys. What he cares about is what I'm doing for him, and in exchange what he's doing for me. Like we just have to show up every day and earn it, and just like any relationship, it's going to build over time. And we also can't get complacent, man. You got to continue to give it sunlight and water and love and good energy, and keep setting those goals. Because the day we get complacent, you know, the day we get stopped. And sometimes in this game, it also doesn't matter like how hard you train and compete, and you have the best game plan, and then you can go out there on the biggest, brightest stage and get stopped. I don't know if Conor McGregor did things wrong last night. You know, he has a great team with him. I'm sure he's trained hard, invested in himself, and it's just a dangerous game with 4-ounce gloves against the best in the world. And so I think another part of the relationship, and this is what we went through with Aaron on our very first fight against Adam Borix, is like hey, we came up short. Where do we go from here? And we all just kind of recommitted that we did feel like we were on the right path. And I think 2020 showed that we are.
So one of your guys, Carlos Condit, before we get to any of the fighting stuff, I have to know, why doesn't Carlos do more media? Like, why don't we see him do more interviews? He's so good at it. Like, I know he doesn't
He
like
is good.
even, after the fight, he's sitting there and he's so calm. He sounds like he's doing a podcast just talking about the fight. Like, I feel like we need more content from Carlos because he's so good
Man.
when he wants to.
Dude, he's like one of the most interesting people in the world. He can speak on so many topics, and he's brilliant, and he knows food and coffee and travel and art and science and history. Yeah, and Carlos is a busy guy too, man. He's a great father, and that's one of the things I respect the most about him. And sometimes I think maybe he doesn't do a bunch of media because he's focused on raising his boys. And if he has any spare time, that's who he's with. Um, but hey, no doubt about that, Lucas. Carlos Condit is the most interesting man in the world.
I mean, that's the guy you need on the Joe Rogan Experience, right? Everybody's always like Derek Lewis and stuff, and it's like with Carlos Condit, like, yeah, he needs to be like monthly kind of guy on that kind of show because that seems like the kind of thing where he would thrive.
Oh, he would thrive, man. And hey, being quarantined in Abu Dhabi with Carlos for 5 days on end, mind blowing. Came out of that a different person.
Because I assume like day one, right? It's like things are normal, and then by like day five, you're talking about whether aliens exist. Have you ever tried DMT? Like, I assume things got pretty crazy pretty fast for you guys.
Those may have been topics that were covered. I can or cannot confirm that.
There we go. Because that's how it gets, right? I feel like everyone, like every time people want to get deep, it always starts with the aliens, right? Like, do you believe in aliens? Weird, like Scientology, but it could just be like, could there possibly be aliens?
Yo, dude, we're from New Mexico, man. Of course we believe in aliens.
That's got to be weird too to be like from a state like that. Where people think New Mexico, and the first thing they talk about is like Roswell, and like
Mhm.
there aliens there? Like everybody just assumes like that New Mexico, like that's where all the aliens are at.
That's where the aliens are hanging out, man. Ask Diego Sanchez, man. He's seen them.
That's right. What is it? Diego Sanchez, George St. Pierre. Like there's a few of your guys that you ask them about it, they tell you.
The truth is out there, man.
What I mean, you think that could be real? I mean, while we're on the topic, like when you hear stuff like that, like is there a part of you that sort of gets the cold sweat? Like, did these guys really see the aliens? Like, are they?
Dude, I barely feel like I know my own city, much less the state, much less the planet, much less the galaxy. Dude, I don't know what's out there, and I think it's vain to think that we're the only thing. So, hey, if these guys saw something and it changed their life, man, awesome. I'm
Of
waiting. I'm waiting to be contacted.
Yeah, but you could have the contacted, like, they scoop up a cow and then you get scooped up afterwards, right? Or you could get the contacted, like, the glowing finger and you're told like you're the chosen one, right? I feel like there's so many different adventures you could choose from.
I'm ready for any and all.
See, I couldn't do that. I watched there was a movie that came out a few years ago where it's like the aliens took someone's kid and it was like a crazy, I think it was called Dark Skies or something. I couldn't sleep for months, like, 'cause I was sure they were coming for me next. Like I watched the movie, now I know the truth. Like, it's terrifying. Like people make it sound like it's all ET, but some of that stuff sounds sounds pretty terrifying.
Yeah, I'm not excited to get like probed.
Yeah.
Uh, I definitely want to know the secrets of the universe and time travel and space-time continuums.
Exactly. But if getting probed, that's like the ticket to entry, then it's like you gotta do what you gotta do to get those answers. Like, we're gonna do whatever it takes.
That's funny.
Well, it's like Carlos Condit. I mean, what's the strategy to get him to do more podcasts? Like, is there a way, like as a coach, like maybe tell him
Oh
mentally,
man,
if you do Joe Rogan Experience, like it'll uncover something in jujitsu. Because Joe Rogan's a jujitsu guy. What's the strategy to get him to start doing that? Because
I don't know, but I would just continue to put the word out there that this is brilliant, and you could definitely spend a 3-hour podcast, uh, and it will all be entertaining.
Because, the interview he did with Esther Lynn, I believe it was at his coffee shop, like,
Hmm.
it was so good, it was and, I feel like the key is sort of get away from just sitting down with a guy and just, like, do something, like, have a meal or something, that's where you can really get the interesting stuff. I feel like that interview was so good, like, we got so much good stuff from him.
I was there that day, man. That was so good, and we have so much love for Esther Lynn and Casey. They are two of the best. So it's a real genuine friendship, which leads to a very different discussion. There's similar interests, and we travel the world together, and there's a lot of love. So that's somebody you could break bread with and have just a very cool conversation with.
That's the thing. I'm always curious about like what's everybody's relationship with the media. What's kind of yours? That's all you did the rounds because everybody wanted to know what all the coaches thought of the Conor McGregor fight and stuff like that. What's kind of your relationship with the media? I feel like no media member has been like, Brandon's a dick. Like he told me to go fuck myself when I asked for an interview. Like I feel like we don't hear that. Maybe behind the scenes, I don't know, but it seems like you have a pretty good relationship with everyone.
Yeah, dude. I mean, everybody's in this traveling circus together, right? Like, it doesn't matter what hat we're wearing. We're all trying to uplift this game that gives us all a livelihood, right? So it's a two-way street, man. Like, Lucas, you're putting me on, man. You're helping us grow our brand and tell our stories. So I thank you. Um, so I always try to, make time for the media where we can, and maybe shed some light on what these guys are like outside of their time in the octagon, right? Because do we have a lot of great, amazing people, and so if I can help share their story and champion what great, amazing humans we have in this mixed martial arts game, the better. Because sometimes we don't always hear that. We hear all the negative stuff and the wildness that comes with it. But this game has changed my life, so I always want to give back however I can.
Speaking of which, like one of my favorite interviews ever has to be when Jon Jones took a walk with Ariel Hawani. They were around the woods. Or I forgot where they were.
Yeah, they were
For me,
in, we call it the Bosque.
yeah.
That's the cottonwood forest along the Rio Grande River. Yeah.
That interview was so good. Like and even with Joe Rogan, he did a good one later on too. But I felt like, he was telling us so much stuff. And, I just to kind of date myself here, I was in high school at the time. And I remember, I'm just watching this thing and I'm like soaking it all up. It's like, oh my God, Jon Jones telling us about all this stuff. Like, I feel like we really uncovered, more of who Jon Jones was aside from just the guy that we see out there throwing the spinning elbows.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool when moments like that happen in this game and people really do open up or use it to work through something, some hard times or some adversary in their life, and especially when you're leading up. I believe that was before the second Cormier fight.
Yeah, that was, I want to say 2015, something like that. So yeah,
Oh, maybe it was before the first one. It was definitely after John had a layoff. I remember, and
yeah.
I those things, dude. Ariel's the best in the business at what he does, and that was also one that Esther and Casey were out here for and helped shoot and produce, and yeah, it's cool. The media, man, sometimes can do such an amazing job telling these stories and giving the public that much more buy-in and commitment and investment in to who these two fighters are that are getting ready to face each other.
So speaking of which, I don't know if you have the answer to this or if you can tell us, but we're talking about the relationship with the media. Jon Jones has something against Luke Thomas, right? Like it became a meme. Everybody loves it. Is there any sort of little snippet you can give us? Like what's going on there? Is there a story behind that, or is it just that you were surprised like everybody else?
No, Luke's always been very hospitable to me. I like talking game plan and strategy with Luke. He has a great mind for the sport, especially in that aspect. Um, yeah, man, I don't know what John reads or says or hears or builds his opinions on, nor am I going to try to steer, waver, or guide him on those things. Sometimes it's just not what I choose to focus my time and energy and efforts with Jon Jones on. So it could be super valid. It may not be. I don't know, but I could just control my own relationships with Luke, and I think Luke Thomas is a cool dude. So yeah, no comment, Lucas.
There we go. Now I have to ask because I feel like everybody wants to know. Like I think everybody's expecting the story of like they ran at each other at a bar, they sized each other up, and then it's like maybe Luke said you're not as good at striking as you think you are, and Jon Jones like, oh yeah, like. But in reality, it could just be as simple as he made a comment, and then maybe the story's boring. But I want to feel like there's an exciting story behind
Hey man, and it could just be like the Michael Jordan meme, like we talked about earlier, right?
it.
Like
Took that personal.
I took that personal. Who knows? So, these fighters will pull a lot of they'll place chips on their own shoulder, right? Whether it's the media or some fan or what another fighter or what their coach has said, and sometimes you don't know what is going to be the fuel that fighter uses to go get it. And yeah, hey, whatever it was, thank you, Luke Thomas, because John went out there, put on a great fight against. I believe that was before the Anthony Smith fight. And hey, man, he got fired up. He went and trained hard. He was fired up after that press conference. So cool. Thanks.
And that was the thing. I feel like we created a mystical beast, like bald Jon Jones with the goatee. Like that was one of the if you see him look like that, like someone's getting their ass whooped real bad that night.
That's the young man look. Yep.
But
Hmm.
that we were talking about shaving your head right before a fight in the mirror. Was that situation for that as well, wasn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, John and I got a bit of a routine. Sometimes I work as his fight day barber, man, and we get him mean and ready for battle. It's there's a ritual aspect to that for sure.
But so I assume you have a lot of pressure doing that though, because if he was like, "I want to slit through my eyebrow," and you were to shave off half of it, and like everybody's talking about why is he missing an eyebrow, like that's the coach's fault, you know? Like I feel like I feel like there'd be a lot of pressure, making sure a guy looks sharp before he goes out in the cage.
I've never worked in a barber shop, so there's that much more added pressure too that I'm not a licensed barber.
And the fact that it's Jon Jones, like imagine it's like an iconic moment, and then forever it's like you completely messed up, like he's got a weird mustache because you messed it up, like that's forever gonna be like
There's a little patch.
exactly like Michael Jordan has his flu game, Jon Jones has the patch fight, like you're gonna have that moment in history.
No, man, I take that job very serious. I practice on my children leading up to that.
That's the best because that's children. Like, what are they gonna say? You're their dad. Like, I feel like everyone's had the ritual with their dad, or he sits you on the chair and he just shaves your head, and if you try to move, like he's gonna put you right back where you need to. Like, that's a part of having a dad.
That's funny.
Did your kids go through the mohawk phase, like where you got to shave the sides, just leave the mohawk? Like, did you manage to go through
Man,
that?
right now they got the Peaky Blinders, man. That's the look for these little boys. They got the low swoop, high shave, Thomas Shelby look,
Yeah.
little gypsy gang.
That's the thing. I feel like Peaky Blinders. That they were saying even in England, I think everybody changed their style based on Peaky Blinders. Like everyone was wearing those kind of suits, and those like the haircut. Everybody wants to be some form of Thomas Shelby.
That's my kids right now. They've never even seen Peaky Blinders, but they're little gypsy gangsters in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Have they perfected the English accent? Because that one, that's not a regular English accent. Like that's you gotta want it on that one.
Oh man, they have a knack for picking up accents. I'm sure if some real gypsy communities heard it, some travelers, they might not like it, but they're working on it.
For sure. Before I wrap up, though, I am curious because you were a part of a historic moment when Holly Holm beat Ronda Rousey, right? Like that, I think in women's MMA, that's going to stand as one of the iconic moments and that happened. What was the feelings, the emotions like when something like that happens? I assume like everybody's got to freak out a little bit.
Oh, you know what? I was not there. She was cornered by her dad, Izzy Martinez, Greg, and Wink. And yeah, I was here in Albuquerque, man, and I'll tell you what, I've never seen this town erupt. And I had the mayor calling me that night, like 5 minutes after, saying like, "Hey, we need to get her a parade when she comes back." And all the planning and logistics had already started. But man, I don't think any one athletic moment has brought so much pride and joy to our community. So, man, I'm gonna always be grateful to Holly. I think we had like 25,000 people come out to downtown Albuquerque for her homecoming celebration, and man, what an amazing experience. And I've known Holly since we were teenagers, and we all believed in her. We knew she could do it, and yeah, she definitely changed women's MMA that night.
What was your reaction as you're watching that on the TV? Like I assume like obviously you're confident because like you expect that to happen, but at the same time to watch it unfold, like there's got to be a feeling of like, wow, she's doing it.
Oh man, when she stopped Ronda's throws by body locking her and taking it down, that's when I knew like the mental break was there. Like when you're Ronda Rousey and you get desperate and you want to go for your tried and true judo throw, and you can't hit it, and then you get taken down from it, like, uh-oh, there goes your safety blanket. And now you're there stuck trying to box with Holly Holm, missing, and Holly's rolling. Oh, when Holly rolled under and Ronda missed so hard she fell, done. Cash that check right then. The head kick was just a matter of time after that.
But that was the crazy thing, right? Like people forget how hyped up her boxing was. Like people were talking about she could beat up Shaq and she was on Ring magazine. Like I think they put her like boxer of the year. She wasn't even a boxer. Like I think people forget just how crazy the Ronda hype got at that point.
Oh yeah, they were talking about her beating Floyd Mayweather.
Right. That yeah.
Whereas Holly was a true WBC, IBO, Holly had all the belts. She was a real boxing champion. And she was a real, this is what a lot of people forget, is Holly was a boxing world champion out of an MMA gym. So everybody thought that this, like, she was transitioning in MMA, and it's like, no, she was always at an MMA gym. She just, there's more money in boxing. That was her path at the time.
Bro, I
But yeah,
remember, Chael Sonnen was like, going off about our titles, right? Like, "These things are made up, these things aren't real," and then after the fight, he was kinda like, "Yeah, okay. Maybe there's levels to this game." Like, it was just people were saying that, and then afterwards, it was like, "Oh, okay, so maybe she can actually box." Maybe those are real actual titles.
man, I got so much love for Holly, and here she is at 39, man. She just had a big win in the UFC, and she's kind of like the perennial contender, and she's ageless, man. I'll tell you what, she is such a disciplined athlete. She inspires the whole team. She really is. Her just mindset, her commitment, and she's gonna keep winning as long as she wants to. I think she has a few years in her if she wants.
Well, there we go. We heard it from the man himself. We did about an hour here, so I will let you go. But before I do that, the most important thing is you have social media, you have fighters, you have things like that. I'm sure you have stuff you'd like to plug. So if you would like to plug anything, now would be the time.
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah, follow me on Instagram. We've been putting up tons of cool behind the scenes training of maybe some of your favorite fighters. So check me out at Six Gun Gibson. And if you're interested in any striking instructionals, you want to learn a little striking for MMA, check out my video at Dynamic Strike, and there's some cool stuff on there.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. There was so much good stuff. I feel like people are going to go through this one. Like if you like those fighters and stuff, you're going to find so many gems from this.
And if you love aliens and DMT, check out this podcast.
There we go. Trying to be the new Joe Rogan with hair. There we go.